Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to Consulting Leaders Podcast, a place where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your own practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, John Degnan. Join me as we talk with the best consultants in their niche. Today, we welcome Dominic Ashley-Timms. As CEO of Notion and co-creator of Star Manager Program, he helps organizations transform accidental managers into effective leaders with measurable impact on engagement, retention, and productivity. Dominic, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Tell us more about yourself.
Well, I have had a varied career. I began my career in pure consulting, working in change management consulting, and then consulting within the retail sector. And I developed a real specialism for the human side of change. And that interest led to me beginning my own firm back in 2000. And over the years, we began life providing change support into very challenging change environments. And over the years, we just attracted more and more managers to the work we were doing to now become an international performance improvement consulting company. And we work exclusively with managers and leaders across organizations to help them more effectively lead their teams, which actually then leads to a change in organizational culture.
At the very beginning, how do you get your feet wet in consulting?
It's a nice question. I started in consulting at the age of 19. I guess I didn't really have a very strong idea of what I wanted to do. And I had the opportunity to go into consulting and really enjoyed the varied work there and the opportunity to work in different organizations. And actually, during my early career, I developed an interest in human-centered design and process engineering, and went on to study ergonomics and cognitive psychology before returning back to consulting. And that's what led to my interest in the human side of change and the human component inside organizations, how actually it's people that drive the change and make organizations what they are. And I knew this was an area that I wanted to specialize in.
You started at 19 and you've been consulting ever since?
I have.
Wow. Wow.
It's a long and varied career, but throughout that career, I've had the opportunity to work in many countries with different groups of leaders and managers of all sizes of groups. And the experience we've gained from working with all those different organizations has led us to be able to codify the approach that we now use when we are working with our large and major clients now to bring about change.
What led you to focus so deeply on management capability?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there was a turning point in my consulting career before I started my own firm where I recognized, which sounds banal, but change is what people make of it. So you can have the best project manager, you can have the best intentions for bringing about change in an organization, but unless you're able to bring the workforce with you and co-opt their energy and their skills and talents to make the change a reality, then it's always going to be suboptimal. And indeed, when I started my own firm, the work originally was to work with project managers to help them become more influential in how do you bring about change. You know, being a great project manager is one thing, but actually, how do you co-opt the skills of other people? How do you draw on their skills and talents to help make the change more successful? And that's what really drove our early work and helped us codify those behaviors that make a real difference.
And what specific problems are you solving today for your clients?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for most of our clients is general employee engagement. And if any of you keep up with the press, Gallup produce a report every year called The State of the Global Workplace. And last year they reported that global employee engagement had fallen back 2 points, which is almost unprecedented. So the level of current employee engagement is at 21% globally. Now in the UK where I live, that is actually a miserable 10%, which means that 90% of our workforce is disengaged. And there's a lot of leadership press around the notion now of people who are quiet quitting or job hugging. They're doing the minimum to get by. And this is just an incredible waste of talent that we have in the organization. If, as a management cadre, we could develop an approach to tap into that. I mean, there are sad statistics around this. 50% of people will actually leave employment simply to get away from their line manager. And this is not because line managers go into work with the intention to be bad line managers. It's just when you get promoted to become a manager, no one ever sits you down and says, now you're a manager of a team. Here's how you might want to adapt your communication style to be able to encourage the best from people and to help them develop and flourish in the workplace. And that's the work we've focused on, and the approach we've developed over the years has now become a really, really established approach.
Can you give me an example of how you re-engage that 10%?
Yeah, it starts with managers changing the way that they operate. Most managers, because they don't really have a very clear idea of quite what they're supposed to be doing as a line manager, despite going on various bits of training, most line managers really labour under the mental model that they are the problem solver, that they're the fixer. And when people come to them for help, they sort of feel obliged to help. But the truth is, every time they direct someone, in that moment, something has been lost. They've actually robbed that other individual of an opportunity to show the thinking they could have done. And if I'd allowed them then to take an action, there would have been an opportunity for me to give them some appreciative feedback, perhaps. And all that has gone the moment I solved the problem for them. So it begins with, how do we help managers change their mental model of what they're actually there to do? Because actually they're not supposed to be the problem solvers. They're supposed to be the enablers of the skills and talents of other people. And that is the shift from being a team worker to being a team leader. But in fact, because most people are not helped to develop that new mental model, they tend to take on that new role without necessarily letting go of all of their previous role, and then try and take on additional work and solve the problems of the team. And it's no surprise then that reports are showing that 50% of all managers and executives report feeling burnt out. And the question is how long can this be sustainable? I mean, all the things that are happening in the workplace now is just layering on, more and more pressure onto managers who are really struggling to cope. Enabling, actually, if you look at the dictionary definition of the word, is actually to help people to be more than they are, and to help tap into their skills and talents. And it's an important idea, but none of us are ever trained in those skills. I mean, adapting our communication style is something perhaps that we might improve as we go through our career. And actually, I was working with a senior team recently, and one senior lady said to me, "Yeah, you retire." And that's a great point. And I think what we want to do is bring that to the front end of people's management careers by really showing them this new approach to engaging people, which we call operational coaching. And operational coaching teaches people an entirely new practice, which is called purposeful inquiry. And I'll just explain that. The difference, I think, and this is, perhaps to your consulting listeners who are listening to this, most of the time we ask questions to gather information, to elicit knowledge so that we can then fix the problems. Curious, I ask questions. Yeah, you're asking questions to gather information so you can provide the solution. Purposeful inquiry flips that on its head completely. You are asking questions to stimulate the thinking of the other person in front of you right now for their benefit. And that is a new and learnt skill which none of us are taught how to do. And so the whole point of developing this operational coaching style is to really understand how you can architect a question in a split second that's of value to the other person, which helps them do the thinking, but at the same time they retain the accountability for taking the actions. So you are not now stepping into the problem and taking on some of that work yourself. And we have managers who completely 180 degrees change their management approach as a result of developing this mindset and these skills to engage the skills, the talents and thinking of other people differently, which, surprise, surprise, they watch people in front of their eyes flourish and grow as you see them and you acknowledge them and you invite them to think and you support them to take an action. And this is actually how management should work.
I wish I had that mindset in my mental toolbox, in my management toolbox 10 years ago.
Absolutely right. And this is why Yeah, I'm at a privileged point in my career where the approach that we developed, this operational coaching approach, is equally popular amongst very senior leaders. We typically, we often work with senior leadership teams and boards, as well as we do with the rank and file of all team leaders, managers across whole organisations. And indeed, we're working with organisations like Virgin Atlantic, the University of Warwick, where they're putting their entire management base through this experience, because it's fundamentally changing the management conversation inside organisations and driving out absolutely huge organisational benefits, not just in terms of culture, but increases in engagement, productivity. It generates a massive ROI. And you can see why it would be the case. If you're starting to engage people with new thinking, they're bringing new ideas. Every time you guide someone or tell them what to do, you're recycling your old knowledge. You've closed down any opportunity to bring new thinking into the organisation. The minute you start to use purposeful inquiry, you unlock so much new potential. And this is especially true now of Gen Z who's entering the workforce, who, quite frankly, no one has a clue how to manage. And it's a real challenge. The whole L&D and leadership development space has failed to keep up with the absolutely tectonic changes in the dynamics of our workplace and the entry of this new generation coming in, which I believe is going to be one of the most exciting generations in history, if we can learn how to tap into their skills and talents.
I'm going to ask you about your book in a minute, but first, I think you should write a book about enabling and empowerment. That's great.
that is largely a subject of the book. The answer is a question, and this was really interesting. The book came about on the back of having been invited by our government to put operational coaching to the test. And we were invited to subject this approach to academic scrutiny. And this would turn out to be the world's largest randomized controlled trial of management behaviours anywhere in the world. And the research was conducted by the London School of Economics. And they ran the programme that we've developed, Star Manager, across 62 different organisations in 14 sectors, and measured the results, which were profound. What they demonstrated was that managers who go through this experience now spend 70% more of their time coaching their team in the flow of work than they were before, and more importantly perhaps generated a 74 times ROI. And when LSE published that paper, it's since become one of the most productive academic papers, in the top 5% of all performing academic papers, which means the number of times it's cited and downloaded. So this is really exciting stuff. And I think at that point, we were sitting here saying, well, this is just too profound for us not to share with the world. So we haven't written a book about management. We've actually put all of our IP into the book. People can learn about the STAR model, how it's become, how it was developed, and actually then how to begin to implement that in their personal management style. So the answer to the question contains all of that in absolute detail. We wanted this to be a book that people can really use to affect how they go to work each day as a line manager.
Dominic, who are your ideal clients today?
Every single sector. And the approach we've developed is equally relatable to a small company with only a handful of employees as it is to a major corporate with managers right across the world. And the program we've developed works internationally. We currently have learners in 40 different countries going through this experience and really changing their behaviour as a result. So I would say that any organisation that is wringing its hands because they can't get their managers to seem to engage the workforce really needs to take a big step back and answer this question. What is it we want our managers to be doing differently? And then how the hell are we going to skill them to do that? And I can say that the current L&D approaches are woefully inadequate for bringing about management behavioural change. It needs to be an experiential programme that is not patronising, but allows managers to discover for themselves what makes them more impactful and helps them gain the confidence to use this purposeful inquiry approach, where it's going to lead to a better outcome when they're engaging with their team members.
It starts at the top. It starts with culture, because you can say line manager, but then there's another manager and another manager and another manager. They all have to have that mindset.
Yeah, 100%. And I think earlier in our work, we started to see this impact, and we had to try and describe it, because you have a manager that starts to ask questions in a different way, and people can't really detect what's changed, but they sense there's a change. And it's because managers are learning to use inquiry just in the flow of their conversation. You know, they're not becoming a coach. They're learning how to use inquiry just as part of conversation. But what we find is that then those people who've been asked questions in turn start to pick up on that and start to ask questions themselves. And what happens is you get this change wave across an organisation, and we call it, you know, spreading bright shadows, because you illuminate someone's thinking by asking them a question. They in turn turn around and illuminate someone else by asking a question. So these bright shadows really spread across an organisation. Indeed, in organisations that we begin working with, I think our clients are astonished that it creates internal demand. They have managers who want to get on this program. Why? Because they can see their colleagues depressurizing, and so, you know, managers want to go through this experience, and so we're very, very lucky that word is spreading. More organisations are learning about the impact of operational coaching and really considering how they can bring this inside their organisation.
How do organizations find you?
We've been working very hard since the publication of the academic paper and the book. The book's been selling very well here in the UK and in North America. It's won an award in New York, which we're extremely proud of.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The New York Big Book Award is one of the biggest book competitions in the world, so we're thrilled to have been acknowledged there. We've been written up in over 200 articles now, and we get people who read about us all the time. Podcasts are incredibly important. This is not the way to work, just layering pressure upon pressure and pressure, and we need to get back to some fundamentals. Becoming a manager is a privilege. Having the opportunity to engage other people and to stimulate them and to help them contribute to the workplace and derive satisfaction from that is probably one of the greatest privileges in any of our careers. Generations as well. Gen Z in particular, we need to be able to tap into them. They don't want to be managed. They want to be cultivated, and that's the difference. How are we as managers going to learn how to cultivate people?
And they're more sensitive too, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and more empathetic. And when you ask people questions that are authentic and coming from a good place, people really sense that. And, you know, having their thinking stimulated is what any of us would want to do. So you can learn more about what we do at our website, which is starmanager.global. Starmanager.global. And the book, The Answer is a Question, is available from all good bookstores, of course, and on Amazon. And we'd be thrilled to talk to any organisation that wants to join those enlightened organisations we're already working with in really changing the whole tenor of management and what it is we want our managers to be doing in our organisations. Yeah, this is something we really focus on early in our life as an organisation, because we recognise that if an organisation is bringing us in, we have an obligation to show them the impact of what we've been able to generate. So every program we've ever run has been built on the principles of being able to capture and measure that return on investment. And we're able to do that very successfully. And in fact, we've had clients sort of a year in have asked us to stop measuring. We don't, of course, we'll carry on measuring. But you need to indicate and draw to the attention of leadership what is actually changing the dynamics of their organisation in a way that really matters to them. And, you know, most C-suites will be quite honest and say that L&D doesn't really sit at the top of their agenda. But productivity does, and growth does, and profitability does. So that's the sort of things that we collect, because that is what matters, and that is what then sustains the investment in going all the way and making sure that your organisation's culture is changing to embrace this new approach to management, which then has an impact on recruitment, because you can honestly say to new recruits, if you come and join us, you'll be managed by someone who has your interests at heart, who wants to cultivate your skills and help you advance in our organisation, and not just have that as lip service, but genuinely to have put in a management approach which will enable managers to do that, helping managers to be more effective. We're not there to supplant L&D, and I think this is really important. We're not a training company. We're a change company, and any change you want to make in an organisation will always come back to your managers and their capabilities for engaging the hearts and minds, the skills and talents of the workforce. And to do that, they need a different approach to the one that we've been using for the last 100 years.
Looking ahead, where do you see your opportunities?
Yeah, it's very exciting for us, actually. We're now getting inquiries from all around the world. I mentioned the academic paper that LSE published is now one of the most widely cited academic papers. Public sector is beginning to wake up to the vast potential of thinking about how we engage managers. And I read a report recently done by the Policy Exchange Unit into the state of management within the National Health Service. Great name, it's called Just About Managing. And they've identified that 10% of clinicians' time is spent dealing with day-to-day operational problems, which should be within the gift of their teams. And that equates to billions of pounds of lost clinical time. So there is real ramifications for thinking about how are we actually engaging the skills and talents of our teams to help them to step up and build their capacity to resolve these problems without having to revert or resort to trying to find their line managers sorted out, which is just a terrible thing.
You mentioned your book, The Answers to the Question. You also mentioned your publications. If people want to find out more about you and see what you do, you mentioned your website as well. Where else can they go?
That's a great question. The website is the main one. I think it's a good starting point because there's lots of information on there, starmanager.global. There are also case studies on there, and we have a number of clients who have come to us from having read the case studies and said, yeah, that's us. And I think they're really important. I would encourage anybody who has any interest in this at all to actually get a copy of the book. And that's not me just selling the book. We've had so many people write to us about the experience they've had just reading the book. And it's been designed so there's something for everyone in that book. It's not just, as I said, a book about management. There are techniques in there that you can easily begin to adopt in your day-to-day management behaviour, which will already make a difference. So I think you'd also learn a lot more about how we've gone about our work, how we've developed what we've developed. And if you're persuaded by that, then there's an opportunity for you to undertake the learning journey yourself, to go through your own Star Manager experience. And we would encourage anyone who's serious about their personal practice of management to really think about how they're going to differentiate themselves in the workplace. At a time, let's be honest, when large organisations like Amazon and others are making swathes of their managers redundant. And I would observe that if you are a manager that is noted for your skills to engage the talents of your team and help them build their capacity, that would somewhat make you bulletproof.
Interesting. Dominic, you taught me something today. I need to be a better manager and I need to enable people in a positive manner. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I've really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you. Some great questions. But really, I think that this is something whose time has come now. We can't carry on with our laissez-faire approach to accidental managers. And I think 82% of all managers are noted to be accidental. They've been promoted for anything other than their notable people skills. And we need to be better.
I always think of the Peter Principle.
Yep. Yeah. I love reading about that. It's fascinating. Actually, there's actual research behind it now. It started off sort of being very tongue-in-cheek, but it actually has been proven in research to be the case. So, yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
Dominic Ashley-Timms, thank you so much. It was a great talk. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.